All right, so looking for a halachic topic with this week's parsha. So I found an interesting thing. It says like this. It says that that there's different mitzvot that are. It says Yehareg Vayavor, that there's an obligation to give up your life for not to violate these three mitzvot. Right? What are they? Excellent. Okay. Gilei Arayot is sexual immorality, which includes incest and adultery. Then Shvichut Damim is murder, and Gilei Arayot and Avodah Zarah is idolatry. Okay. So these are the big three. That whenever given a choice between these big three, or doing the sin or giving up your life, so a Jew is expected to give up his life, and be proud of the fact that his ideals are more important than his life. That there's some things which are more important. That I'd rather leave this world than to do something that goes against what my life represents. Okay, so when do we say that you can make just a one exception? Usually I believe in not in eating kosher, right? But if a non-Jew puts a gun against my head, so I'll eat non-kosher, right? So how do I decide what's something that is by definition a contradiction to the meaning of my life, and when do I say that I can just make an exception one time? So the Torah makes a very clear distinction that for the three cardinal sins, so you can't make an exception. These are the pillars of existence. These are the pillars of reality that you can't make a one-time exception for these things. Now, the Gemara also says that this is the fourth thing, and that is that something which the non-Jew has in mind to take you away from Judaism. That if he has in mind to convert you, that in that situation, so even something that usually speaking would not have the category of Yehareg Vayavor, but in the context that it's a way of trying to make you non-Jewish, trying to make you less Jewish, so then it's going to, I'm sorry?
And then you also have to give up your life.
Then you also have to give up your life. The example given in the Gemara is a certain kind of shoelace, that there was this kind of black shoelaces, that it was the Jews only wore these kind of special shoelaces, and that was a sign of being a Jew. So it says in the Gemara that if the non-Jew would forbid the Jews of wearing these special shoelaces, so that would be Yehareg Vayavor. Because the reason why they're doing it is not just because they get a kick out of watching you with the special shoelaces, because they're doing it because they want you to assimilate, because they want you to say, they said, no, we don't like that you're so Jewish. Be less Jewish. If the point is that you should be less Jewish, then a person is obligated to give up his life. Nowadays, I think what's an example of something that a clothing that represents the fact that you're Jewish. Nowadays, a kippah, right? If there would be a law in America that we don't like the Jews look so different, no more wearing kippahs.
It was recently in Germany that for reasons of safety.
That's something else. That is for self-defense. But if the government would say it's forbidden to wear kippahs, then the halacha would be that you're obligated to give up your life. Okay, you have to be strong.
Probably it will be like even inside Beit Knesset and everywhere. But maybe there is only on the streets or something like that.
No, what I'm saying is that there's a difference between that who is telling you not to wear a kippah. If they don't tell you, if the government doesn't say anything, it's just you have individuals that are anti-Semites. So then we say that it's only a custom. Because it's only a custom to wear a kippah, because it's only a custom, so then if my life is at stake, so I should give up the custom, correct? But if the government says that we want to make the Jews assimilate, and the way that we're making the Jews assimilate is by forbidding them to wear kippahs, then it becomes much more severe. It's more than not wearing a kippah. Then we look at the not wearing kippah as an act of assimilation. Clear?
A lot of the Hanukkah story, a lot of the things that the Greeks were asking technically would be allowed, but since there was a whole connotation of giving up Judaism.
Excellent.
There was a story there connected, like not exactly with assimilation, but with idolatry, about a mother and her 7 sons, and they have a life not to bow down to the idol. This is like the ideal, which may seem pretty hard to understand nowadays, but nevertheless.
Interesting that they mentioned that. The majority of that story was a clear act. It wasn't. It was a clear act of idolatry. It was real avodah zarah, right over there. then part of that story is going to be relevant soon. We're going to get to something which is, that's a pretty simple story. It's a pretty straightforward story. Okay, so now, why am I speaking about this today? Because there was a story during the time of the destruction of the first temple, during the time of towards the destruction of the first temple, that Nebuchadnezzar, so he had a certain idol, and he told everybody, he told his officers, take this idol and put it through the streets. Tell everybody, bow down to this idol. And everybody was bowing down to the idol. The entire Jewish people was falling like flies. They weren't being strong. And 4 Jews were very strong. One was named Daniel. Then Daniel, he ran away. And the other 3 were Hananel, Mishael, and Azariah. Okay? They were, you learned about this already? What, today?
No.
Just, from Sefer Daniel. So Hanan, Mishael, Azariah, so they were 3 very brave people, and they refused to bow down to the idol. And right? And Nebuchadnezzar threw them into a furnace, and miraculously they lived. They survived the furnace. Okay, we mentioned them in the Slichot. We say, Misha'ana l'Chanan Mishav Azariah b'toch kivshana ish hu yanenu. That he who listened to the prayers of Hanan Mishav Azariah when they were in the furnace, so he should answer us. That their merit is a great merit. That they risked they were willing to give up their lives, but they didn't actually give up their lives because Hashem saved them. Now,
I just saw something. It's really interesting that in their minds, if they had the story of Avraham Avinu in their minds, it's funny because what happened to Abraham was actually in the same land that Babel was. So they basically went back to the place where Abraham came from and went through the same story.
Wow. Brilliant. Amazing. There's a family that I know. I know one of them. That there's a rabbi in Har Nov named Rabbi Azariah Berzon. So he's one of 3 brothers, and so the parents named their kids Hananel, Mishael, and Azariah. I assume that they named Mishael last, because that's the only real weird name. Because if you don't, otherwise you don't want to end up with how did they know that they're going to have 3? You know?
Yeah.
That's they had Emunah. So anyway, so. It's not exactly jumping into the furnace, but it's having a leap of faith. Okay, so it says in the Gemara in Psachim Nun Gimel and Beis, it says like this. It says that how did Hanan, Mishael, Azariah? How did they know that that's what they were expected to do? How did they know that the proper thing was to jump into the furnace? So it says that they learned from this week's Parsha. They learned from the frogs. Excellent. How do you know this? Where do you know this from?
We studied
with a listening. Okay. So it says that they learned out from the frogs. So Hashem told all the frogs that, guys, go to Egypt, go to everywhere, go to the bedrooms and go to the ovens and go to the breads. So the Gemara says that, if the ovens are making breads, so then that means the ovens are hot. And even though the ovens were hot, they were boiling hot. So Hashem told the frogs to go to the ovens. And the frogs, so they listened to Hashem. And even though it was burning hot ovens, they would throw themselves into the furnace to listen to Hashem. So certainly if the frogs did it, even though they weren't obligated to sanctify God's name, so certainly they were obligated to sanctify God's name, so we should do the same. That's what the Gemara says. Now, there's an obvious question that everybody asks when they read this Gemara, and that is, we just got finished saying that there's an obligation in the Torah to give up your life for the 3 cardinal sins, and one of the 3 cardinal sins is avodah zarah. That means that the Torah itself says that whenever you have this 2 options, either to give up your life or to bow down to an idol, so the Torah tells you that very clearly that you have to give up your life. So where do the frogs come in? Why do they have to learn out from the frogs? That's the question that Tosfot asks. Okay, so Tosfot gives 2 answers. The question is very clear. It's a very obscure Gemara. Where do the frogs come into this? It seems very obvious that they should have to. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to understand that the problem, over here the situation requires that you should jump into the furnace. Okay, so that's the question. So yeah.
So the subject of the 3 cardinal sins should be very strong in the mind of Daniel and the Jews in Babel, because it was because of these three sins that the first Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, and that was just a few years before they went there. So it was like fresh in their memories.
Again, brilliant. Amazing. Okay, so that's the question. That's the question that Tosafot asks. So what can we infer from this Gemara? That the situation with Chanal Meshav Azariah was not exactly your classical idolatry. Because if it would have been your classical idolatry, then you wouldn't need to come on to any derivation from the frogs. It's an open shut case. The Torah says that when it comes to idolatry, you have to give up your life. So Tosfot offers two answers as to what was the exception over here. Why wasn't this your classical case of idolatry? And for which reason they have to derive it from the what you call. The first answer is that it wasn't a real idolatry. That Nebuchadnezzar, that this idol, so they didn't realize this because the artist wasn't so talented, but really Nebuchadnezzar had in mind this idol should look like him.
It was based on his dream, right? This statue?
No, I don't think so. No, he wanted this. This was just an image of himself. This like Stalin, made people had pictures of himself all over. I'm not sure if they bowed down to him, but did they?
What?
Would they bow down to pictures of Stalin?
No, but they had to have one everywhere.
Yeah.
And they would thank Stalin for the wheat and candies and
to the picture.
In schools.
Yeah.
Not necessarily to the picture, but they would say it with their mouth.
Mm-hmm. So just like Stalin, he liked having his picture everywhere, and I'm sure he would have liked people saluting his picture, or certainly people bowing down to his picture. That was up his alley. So Nebuchadnezzar was the same kind of guy, and so that was the idea over here. But really deep down, Nebuchadnezzar could be that he didn't believe that this was a deity. He didn't believe that this idol was actual a god. So that's why it wasn't actually considered Avodah Zarah. It wasn't actually considered Avodah Zarah. Okay, so now that's the first answer. That's the answer which was given by Rabbeinu Tam. Okay, you've heard of Rabbeinu Tam? Yeah, the grandson of Rashi. Okay? Okay, so that's the first answer which was given Rabbeinu Tam. The second answer, which was given by the Ri, his cousin, was that for a different reason, that this wasn't your classical Avodah Zarah, and that is that over here they had an option that just like Daniel was able to run away, so they also could have run away. So, but even though they could have run away, but nevertheless they didn't run away, and they chose to, and so there's so you have to understand that this according to the second answer, according to the Ri, so they could have run away. So the question is, how is it permitted for them to give up their life? How is it permitted for them to give up their life? So if you could have ran away, so then is it actually permitted to give up your life or not? The question that the truth is that there's a general machloket that a person that wants to volunteer to give up his life to sanctify God's name, even when it's not necessary. So is that a praiseworthy thing or not? I think we've mentioned this once in a different class.
There's a story about it, about the fill in the dove.
Right, perfect. Okay, so is it praiseworthy to give up your life or not? So Tosfot says that it is. It's praiseworthy to always volunteer to give up your life, even something which is not necessary. And the Rambam disagrees. The Rambam and the Ramban, the Rambam and the Ramban say that if a person that volunteers to give up his life when it's not necessary, if a person says, no, I refuse to eat pork, even if I die, so it's considered that he committed suicide. He's not allowed to. So now they come over here. So over here, it was certainly they were giving up their lives for religious beliefs, right? That they say, certainly when Nebuchadnezzar asked them, why don't you want to bow down? So you know what they said? Because we are Jews, we don't bow down to pictures, right? Certainly for a Jewish idea. So certainly it falls under the category of volunteering to give up your life to sanctify God's name, right? They're certainly doing it because they wanted to be Jews. Question is, were they allowed to do that? So according to Tosfot, so Sababa. because they were volunteering to give up their life to sanctify God's name. But according to the Rambam and the Ramban, so how could they do that? So according to the Rambam and the Ramban, we must answer that they hold, like the second answer, that the reason really this was bona fide avodah zarah, even though it was bona fide avodah zarah, so the only reason why it wasn't the regular classical case of Yahar Gvayavar is only because they were able to run away. Whereas according to the Rabbeinu Tam, that it wasn't bona fide avodah zarah, so it's just volunteering to give up your life, even though you're really not. Whereas according to the Ri, so they were there. They were giving up their life for avodah zarah, right? So it's not considered suicide. Okay. Question is, should I run away? Should I not run away? And for that, so they learned from the frogs. Where did they see from the frogs that they could have run away? Could the frogs have run away?
From the fire.
Yeah.
I think normally frogs don't jump into the fire.
Well, what I mean to say is that Hashem told the frogs, everybody into the fire. So could they have run away?
No.
So then how can Hanan and Mishav Azara learn out from the frogs that they should not run away? Now the answer is very simple, that they could have run away. Why? Because Hashem didn't tell any particular frog who's going to go into the bed and who's going to go into the oven. How did they figure it out?
Fire, who by water.
What?
Who by fire, who by water.
Right. But who by fire and who's just going to have a good time? They could have... you could have also, it says that there's also the frog that jumped into Paro's stomach and whatever, that's more watery. But you also had the frogs that were just living it up, that they were just having a good time.
The frogs, they didn't know that. But every frog died to smell, and so if they jumped in the fire, or if they were on a bed, or even in a pot of water, they would die anyway later.
So they didn't know that, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
They didn't know that they were going to die. But what I'm saying is that over here, that the frogs that went into the oven, so theoretically they could have gone elsewhere and saved their lives, but because they wanted to fulfill the mitzvah of Hashem, so they chose to go into the oven. Okay, so according to this opinion, that's what they're learning out from the frogs.
What is the halacha like? So the frogs are more like Tosfot.
We're gonna see soon. Okay, so the frogs, these are the two opinions. Okay, so we have two approaches. These are two answers. Once again, the Gemara says the Hanan Mishav Azara that they learned out from the frogs that they should give up their life, that they should jump into the furnace. And the question is, why do they have to learn out from the frogs? This is an open shut case. This is an easy, elementary question. Everybody knows the for idolatry, you're obligated to give up your life. And we have two answers to answer this question. That the first answer is Rabbeinu Tam, that it wasn't about avodah zarah, but rather it was just a picture of Nebuchadnezzar. And second of all, that they could have run away. Now the question is, on the first explanation, the answer of Rabbeinu Tam, that it wasn't a bona fide avodah zarah, but rather it was just a picture of Nebuchadnezzar. So the question is, so how was it actually permitted for them to do it? So we said before that Tosfos will tell you that they were volunteering because it was for religious purposes. So you're allowed to volunteer to give up your life. The question is that there's lots of Rishonim that they disagree with Tosfos that says, because it's really a very wild opinion, the fact that you can always volunteer to give up your life, even though like Hashem didn't ask you to give up your life. It's like that's so the Ramban, for example. So he agrees with both. He agrees that you're not allowed to volunteer to give up your life. At the same time, he says, like Rabbeinu Tam, that it wasn't real avodah zarah. So according to him, so how can you understand why was it actually permitted? So he says a very interesting thing. That according to the Ramban, why did Hanan Mishav Azara actually give up her lives, even though it wasn't actually avodah zarah? Because some of the people in the community, they actually didn't really understand. They weren't so sophisticated, and they thought that it was avodah zarah. Meaning to say that it didn't really look like Nebuchadnezzar too much. It looked like just like a regular, like a voodoo doll or whatever. It looked like a picture of somebody. And the officer went through the streets and he says, "Everybody, bow down to this." And so they didn't say, and so and if anybody would say, "What's that? What's that? What's that?" He said, "If you don't bow down, I'll shoot you." So they didn't really think too much. They didn't realize that it was for avodah zarah. They didn't realize it was for Nebuchadnezzar. Many of the people, some of the people at least, thought that it was actually avodah zarah. Okay. So now, what does that mean? So what's the situation? This is something which is actually not avodah zarah. It's actually not avodah zarah. Why is it not avodah zarah? Because it actually didn't have in mind to be a deity. But even though it's not avodah zarah, but some people think it's avodah zarah. Okay, so if I'm doing something that it's actually not avodah zarah, but to the onlooker it might appear that I'm doing avodah zarah. So what's the status of that? So we have a word for that. We have a word for what's the halacha if I'm doing something which is actually permitted, but it looks like I'm doing something which is prohibited. Do you know what that word is called? Marasayan. Okay, Marasayan means that it's a sin to the appearance of the eye. Okay, so it says you're not allowed to do something which looks like you're doing a sin. So the Gemara tells us in Avodah Zarah that if you have a fountain, that the fountain that is in front of an Avodah Zarah, and in order to drink from the fountain, you have to kneel down, and it looks like you're bowing down to the Avodah Zarah. So the Gemara says that it's forbidden to do that. And the Gemara asks, that's obvious. Why do you have to tell us that? So the Gemara says an interesting thing, that no, the Mishnah is coming to tell you that even if you're so thirsty that if you don't drink, you'll die. Even if you're so thirsty that if you don't drink, you'll die, it's still forbidden to take from the fountain of the Avodah Zarah because it looks like you're bowing down. So what does it seem like it's saying? It seems like it's saying that something which is Maras Ayin of Avodah Zarah is also considered Yahareg Val Yavar.
Or basically any Marit Ayin of any of the three sins.
Correct. Okay, so there's actually two approaches in the Rishonim. The first approach is like it sounds like it's saying that anytime Maras Ayin is also considered Yahareg Val Yavar. Now how could that be? So there's a concept of the Gemara called Avizrayu. What's Avizrayu? Avizrayu means it's a modern Hebrew. It's a word in modern Hebrew as well. And Avizrim means like the things that come along with something you're buying. You can buy like a electric shaver and Avizrim. What's Avizrim? Avizrim is all the adapter and the comb and the different accessories. Yes, that's perfect. So in modern Hebrew, Avizrim means accessories. Okay, it really comes from the ancient Hebrew. In ancient, that Avizrayu means the sides, means the things on the side. So what's the things on the side of Avodah Zarah? So this might be an Avizrayu of Avodah Zarah. The Gemara talks about something which is called Avizrayu of Gilei Arayot. Okay, what's an example of Avizrayu de Gilei Arayot? So it's not only the real Gilei Arayot is to have sexual relations, but the Gemara says that not only is having the relations itself the Yahareg Val Yavar, but even hugging and kissing, for example. That even though it's not karet, it's not Gilei, it's not like three cardinal sins, like a non-Jew, for example. A non-Jew is not allowed to have Gilei Arayot. Right? What does that mean? That only means not to have sexual relations. A non-Jew is not prohibited not to hug and kiss somebody that he's not allowed to be with. Yes?
He's not prohibited the Marit Ayin of the sin.
Certainly, no. Even real hugging and kissing. It's not that if you see a non-Jew kissing his friend's wife, so you don't need to kill him.
But he's still forbidden the Gilui itself, right?
Yeah.
From the Nohai law.
Yes, Gilui is one of.
Yeah, because there's something on that if the issue is Avodah Zarah and someone forces him to do Avodah Zarah, then he doesn't have to die.
We learned this here. That's a machlaket. What?
Is there a concept of zera for goyim?
No.
In any case.
No. So the non-Jew is only prohibited in Gilei Arayot himself, whereas the Jew, so even Avizrayu, so even the hugging and kissing, is also going to be considered Yahareg Val Yavar. Okay, so this opinion claims that Maras Ayin, the Maras Ayin of Avodah Zarah, is considered Avizrayu of Avodah Zarah. However, the Ran, and the Gemara over there, disagrees. The Ran says that no, that doesn't make any sense. And when it says in the Gemara that you're so thirsty that you might die, it doesn't really mean that you're actually going to die. It means that you feel like you're going to die, or there's a slight, like 1 in a million chance that you might die. But it doesn't really mean if there's actually push comes to shove, if you really think you're going to die, so then you should do it. Okay. This is, by the way, this idea of having a fountain that you have to kneel down in front of the Avodah Zarah. So that's it was a common practice to build things in a way that people on the side of the Avodah Zarah, so they liked to get everybody to bow down. I don't remember if I told you once the story of Mordechai Eliyahu.
I know the story of the Israelis in India when they go to those Hindu temples.
Yeah.
And there's like a big statue inside, and the entrance they make it on purpose is like really really low.
Mhm.
So when you walk in, you're already like sort of like
Right.
bowing down sort of. And then like the
So-
rabbi was telling the story that some Israelis that go in there, some of them with some good conscience, they go there to visit, but they learn to walk in like with their backs.
Right.
So they
Perfect. Okay.
they bow down and they walk in from behind.
Uh-huh. That's perfect. That's a similar story with Mordechai Eliyahu. Mordechai Eliyahu was the chief rabbi, the Sephardi chief rabbi of Israel, and once he was visiting the Vatican, and so he was going with his somebody accompanying him, and he told the person that just follow me, whatever I do, so just follow after me, and so. For Mordechai Eliyahu, they came to a certain place that their tour guide was bringing them here. Come here and come to this room. We're going to show you this very cool place. And Mordechai Eliyahu, so he saw that it was a low entrance. So he immediately realized what was going on, and he walked in backwards. And the person accompanying him didn't know like why is the rabbi walking in backwards, but he just listened to his orders. So he went in backwards, and as soon as he turned around, so he realized that when they came out of the room, there was a huge cross. And they had built the room in a way that everybody that has to walk into the room should kneel down in front of the cross. So it was a common thing. This is Maris Ayin. A person that would do such a thing, it's not considered that he bowed down to idolatry because he just because
You would be tricking into it.
yeah. Even if he wasn't tricking into it, the fact that he wasn't trying to do it, he was just trying to walk in. Or in the case of the fountain, he was just trying to drink water. Right? That's not considered an act of bowing down. That's considered an act of drinking or an act of entering. Right? That if the conscious decision was, I want to walk into the room or I want to drink from the water, so then that's not considered bowing. Right? So it's just Marasayan. The person might not realize. The person that just sees this picture, right? I'm sure they have a picture, then they send all the pictures on the internet of look who bowed down to a cross, and they don't show you like that. He just thought he was walking in. so that's why it's only Mara sign, because it looks to the onlooker like you're bowing down, but for yourself it's really not considered an act of bowing down. So anyway, so there's a dispute in the Gemara as to if Marasayin of Avodah Zarah is actually considered Yahareg Va'al Yavar. So if it is Yahareg Va'al Yavar, like the similar understanding of the Gemara, so then going back to the Rebbeinu Tam, so you explained to us that it's not actual idolatry. But what is it now? Now it's just Marasayin, because people think that it's an idol. It's really just a picture of Nebuchadnezzar. So it's really not a deity. So it's really not Avodah Zarah. But everybody thinks it's Avodah Zarah. So it's still Avodah Zarah. So what's the answer? So if you look carefully in the Ramban, so he doesn't say everyone thought. He actually says that some people thought. So if I'm doing something that 90% of the people that would see me would think I'm okay, and 10% of the people that see me think I'm doing something wrong, so that is certainly not considered Avodah Zarah. Okay, so that's why, according to that, so that is what they were learning. That's what they figured out, that from the frogs that they should be giving up their lives. Yes.
So we talk about like the halachic aspect, and it seems to me that there is like one big difference is that in that generation, I think they even though they were ready to give up their lives, they also knew that there was the very real possibility that Hashem would save them in a miracle. That's actually what ended up happening. And today, when we deal with this subject, it's like we don't consider that possibility at all. So doesn't that wouldn't that weigh in on their thought process over whether they should do it or not, giving up their life?
You're claiming that when they jumped into the furnace, they were actually hoping that Hashem would save them.
Not hoping, but it's just like it feels like in that generation, the possibility was in the air more than like Is that true? Is that even true?
I disagree on both accounts.
Okay.
I think that they weren't assuming that they were going to be saved, and I think that
I'm sure they were ready, certainly.
yes, I think that the other and also the converse, that just as Hashem saved them, so He can also save us.
Okay.
That Hashem can always do miracles, and even nowadays Hashem can perform open miracles. Okay, so now just in the small time that we have left, so I want to just get back to the other opinion, and that is a very interesting opinion. That is that the Re claims that the reason why it wasn't bona fide avodah zarah is because they could have run away. And speaking of running away, so the question is that is actually that the halacha. What should I do if I'm in the Spanish Inquisition and they say that either run away or convert or we'll kill you? So what should I do? Should I say, kill me, I'm proud to be a Jew, or is it better to run away? Obviously, to be a Marano is obviously not an option, right? The Maranos, everyone knows the Maranos made a mistake. The Maranos should not have been Maranos because they were outside. On the outside, they were being non-Jews. They were being Christian on the outside. That was they made a mistake. I'm not judging anybody, but they failed. They failed in what they were supposed to be doing. So is it better to run away? Like, I think most people would say that obviously it's better to run away. It's like it would be smarter to run away. Why should you just die for nothing if you can run away? So
live another day and make more mitzvahs.
yeah. Where else do we find that it's better to run away? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So the Romans wanted to kill him because he refused to stop learning Torah. So what did he do? He didn't say, I refuse to stop learning Torah, you can shoot me. He ran away to the cave. That's why he ran into the cave for 14 years. So we find that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai ran away. We find that in the Inquisition that they ran away. And Rabbi Yochanan Mishal V'Zara, even though they could have run away, they didn't run away. There's another story about the Ger Tzedek from Vilna, that he was from someone from the royal Polish family, and he converted to Judaism, and he became a student of the Vilna Gaon. And then spies, the policemen from his father, caught him, and because he had been a traitor, because he became a heretic, because it was a Christian country, so they punished him to be burned at the stake. And the Vilna Gaon actually told him that if you want, I can make you a golem. I can make a magical man that would look like you, and they will think that they've killed you. And they didn't. And he said, no way. This was an amazing mitzvah that I have an opportunity to do a mitzvah of give up my life. I have to Kiddush Hashem. I refuse to give it up. So he didn't. So he chose to be killed, even though he could have run away. So when do we say that you should run away? When do we say that you not run away? So I think the answer can be found based on one of the responses that was given during the Holocaust. That during the Holocaust, the questions of when, like, should I give up my life? Questions like day and night, and so many times, according to the letter of the law, it might sound like it's better to give up your life. Like, for example, that on Yom Kippur, so sometimes they would bring lots of food, and they would say, hey, today is your Yom Kippur, you should eat lots of food. So there's amazing stories about people that never in their life fasted Yom Kippur, but on that day, so they said, no, you disgusting jerks, kill me. I'm not, and they actually gave up their life. But a situation like that, so what should we actually do? Is it better in such a situation to follow the halacha or not? So the Pasuk said a very interesting thing, that in that situation, why is it that when somebody wants to destroy Judaism, so it's better to give up your life? Because that's a Kiddush Hashem, because you're sanctifying by God's name. Now sometimes, so it's not just that they want a certain people to assimilate, they want that there should not be Judaism in the world. That was the case by the Romans, that was the case by the Nazis. So in the situation that they want to annihilate Judaism from the world, so if you give up your life, so you're just helping their cause. So that's making a bigger Chilul Hashem. If you help them, God forbid, to destroy Judaism from the world, so then you're making a Chilul Hashem.
In a very simplistic way, our revenge is by living.
Exactly, perfect. That in such a situation that they're trying to annihilate Judaism from the world, then you should run away. In a situation that it's a private thing, that we're not, Judaism will remain. It's just that I want you to prove to me that it's not so bad to eat pork, So in such a situation, so it is praiseworthy to volunteer. You don't have to, but it is praiseworthy. That's what we learn out from the facts. That it's praiseworthy to say, no, I want to make a point. Like that. That's what Hanan, Mishael, and Azar wanted to do, even though they could have run away. But they saw that the religious morale of the people was very, very low. They saw that people were bowing down like flies, even though they thought that it was really Avodah Zarah, and they wanted to raise the morale, the spiritual pride of the Jewish people. And in such a situation, it's actually better to volunteer to give up your life. Okay, and that is what we learn out from the facts. Shabbat Shalom. Yes.